You've heard about the opioid crisis. It's real. It's closer to you than you think. Every day, an average of 115 Americans die from opioid overdose. It's touching Hoosiers all over Indiana. The opioid crisis may be affecting someone around you, a family member, a friend, neighbor, or even a coworker. What can we do to help? Where do we start? It begins by knowing the facts about opioid use disorder. It will change how we think and what we say. Through knowledge, we'll better understand how we can help reduce the stigma surrounding opioid misuse. It's time to understand. Let's start with the basics. What are opioids? You may have heard of opioids like oxycodone, known as OxyContin, hydrocodone, known as Vicodin, codeine, morphine, and fentanyl. These are prescription pain medications that are most often taken in pill form. They require a prescription from a doctor, but can also be obtained illegally on the street. Heroin and fentanyl are highly addictive and powerful opioids that are injected, smoked, or inhaled, and can be deadly even in small doses. The use of these opioids has skyrocketed, and the impact has been devastating. How do people get their hands on opioids?
What started me down the path to using opioids, it started in 2006. I was working as a supervisor at Caterpillar and I had a surgery. I had a torn rotator cuff and had to have immediate laser surgery, couldn't move my arm at all. I had to do physical therapy for about a year. They prescribed pain medications, Lortab, Percocets, and I just crossed the line. You know, they say there's an invisible line that you cross. I don't know when I crossed it or how I crossed it. I just know that within a few months I was using more than prescribed. Started doctor shopping pretty quickly, and the next thing I knew, I needed them just to survive. I couldn't function. I couldn't do my daily mom responsibilities. It was hard for me to go back to work. It was hard for me to get the energy without having a pill in my system.
Well, I initially started off with drinking, and that would lead to a variety of just experimentation. A lot of the kids that I were hanging around with were having parties on the weekend. There was often LSD and marijuana, and as we got a little bit older, started getting introduced to a little bit more what I call maybe serious drugs. Started to see a little bit of cocaine out there. Pills would be around, but wasn't the primary focus originally.
Opioids found me, or I found opioids throughout my high school years. I was really good in high school, and I did a lot of extracurricular things, and my parents trusted me a lot. I started babysitting for a family member, and instead of paying me with money, he would pay me in painkillers. And so I thought, well, this is cool, you know, I can get high, and you know, they don't have to worry about anything, and they would always give it to me after I was done babysitting, so I was like, okay, this is no big deal. And the first time I stumbled upon heroin was from that same cousin, and I was 12 years old.
You know, I started using opioids because I was in pain. I have Crohn's disease. I've had that since I was 5 years old. And I was in high school at the time, a freshman in high school, and I watched House at the time, and you know, House would take Vicodin for pain. And I didn't know at that time that Vicodin was pretty much like taking heroin. And I very naively, like my dad had some left over in the cabinet from a surgery, and I took some to help my headache, and it was like, oh my God, this is the best feeling I've ever felt in my life. From that point on, it was about 3 months before I was like hooked and using every day, and I knew that I could use my Crohn's disease and these other chronic illnesses that I had to get into pain clinics.
The most important thing we need to understand is that opioid use disorder is a disease. Once we grasp this basic fact, we can begin to realize that there is treatment for this disease and that recovery is possible. There are two ways people can become dependent on opioids. First, they can be medically prescribed by a doctor. If you've ever had a medical procedure or surgery, you may have been prescribed one of these pain medications. Second, a person can take an opioid such as heroin, fentanyl, or opioid pills recreationally. They may seek, find, and purchase them on the street or get them at parties. About 80% of people who use heroin started by misusing prescription opioids. Although people react differently to opioid use, dependency can happen immediately. The threshold to dependency is like an invisible line, and the line is different for each person. As the use of opioids increases, dramatic changes in brain functions increase. The increased desire and planning on how to get opioids becomes an obsession and leads to misuse. When this threshold is crossed, it becomes a chronic brain disease known as opioid use disorder. So, how does opioid use become a disease? Let's have Dr. Jennifer Walthall, Indiana Family and Social Services Administration Secretary, walk us through the science.
Opioids are drugs that excite the parts of the brain that make you feel good. They trigger feelings of pleasure, relaxation, and euphoria. But they also cause serious changes to the brain and body. Although the initial decision to take drugs may be voluntary or medically prescribed, chemical and neurological changes to the brain severely restrict a person's self-control. As a person increases the use of opioids, the opioids bind to the brain receptors in larger numbers, and they hijack the individual. Notice how the opioids flood the brain and bind to receptors. After you take opioids for a while, the feel-good parts of your brain get used to them, and you may need more and more to get those same feelings. Soon, your brain and body strongly crave more just to feel normal and not sick. Most people can't stop using opioids just because they want to. Once you become dependent on opioids, they have a hold on you. However, as with many diseases, there's treatment.
So, how can you tell if someone you know, a friend or family member, is having problems with opioids? What are the signs? What do you look for?
So I came home, I was sitting in my driveway. I had just went and tried to obtain some more opiates, and I was sitting in the driveway. I was unable to do so, and I was just kind of sitting in my car as I got into the driveway, and all of a sudden I was going through my brain trying to figure out how I was going to get these pills, and it dawned on me that I didn't feel very good. I was like, wow, my stomach's really bothering me. I don't feel very good right now. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was experiencing withdrawal symptoms for the very first time. And at that moment, it was just clear as day that I was gonna need some help. I wasn't seeking it immediately, but I knew that there was an issue as soon as I was having physical withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, they gave me the courage to do anything and everything. It was fun for actually quite a while, to be quite honest. But then there came that time when it was not fun no more, and it was a necessity. I constantly sought to escape my feelings.
I did not take it as prescribed. I went through the refills and everything much quicker than what I should have. And when they ran out and I was out, I remember feeling sick, and I thought I had the flu in the middle of the summertime or something. And then it really dawned on me then that my body, I was physically withdrawing from the opioids.
It wasn't until 2002 that I started taking pain pills, and I realized right away that if I took them, I did not care, or I did not think as much as I did. And for me, at that point in time, it felt like a solution, and a good one that made sense.
I didn't realize that opiates had its grasp on me until I started going through withdrawal symptoms. I didn't think I was addicted to them. And then the money I was making went away because the $20 I was gonna make off this pill became a free extra pill. And it just, any profits I was gonna make, it ended up being consumed by me until I couldn't even deal drugs anymore because I was just, my addiction had just taken control. And then I started doing, I started robbing family members, strangers, anybody to get my fix. I became a completely different person.
The signs and symptoms of opioid use disorder can remain hidden if you are unaware or if you're not looking for them. But if you pay close attention, unusual behavior or signs may indicate that something is not right. Look for these signs: socially withdrawn, unusual excitement or euphoria, dramatically changing moods, sudden financial problems, drowsiness or loss of consciousness, doctor shopping for multiple prescriptions, criminal activity to obtain drugs. Let's listen to different people's thoughts about when they realized opioid use disorder was a disease.
At that time when they removed my daughter from my care and I realized that I had a drug problem, it wasn't a disease to me. I thought it was a character flaw. I thought there was something wrong with me that I couldn't use successfully, and that all I would have to do was just stop using and my life would get better. And so that's what I did. I stopped using. I thought I was doing really great. I regained custody of my daughter, and a couple months later, I wound up in jail after a relapse. I had robbed the place where I had worked. My boyfriend and I, we had robbed it, and they had issued a warrant for my arrest, and they removed my daughter from my custody again, and I went to jail. And that's when I realized this is a lot deeper than just stopping. There's gotta be something else to save my life.
You know, being in a health science profession, I definitely had a clear understanding of the neurobiological basis for opioid use disorder. So, I mean, I had an understanding of it, but I don't know if that was like, that knowledge was so readily available to me if I was not in a health science profession.
And I think that's unfortunate, and not just for me in my situation, but for everybody else that still struggles with it. Because I know me personally, my mindset was, I would kind of beat myself up about it. Why can't I get a hold of this thing? Why can't I figure this out? Almost had that mentality that there was something wrong with me, or I was like a weak-willed person, that I couldn't figure this out. And I think because of that, a lot of people do carry some shame, embarrassment, guilt.
I just thought that it was something that we used to have fun. I know that when I had substances in my body, it was always a little bit easier to talk to the girls. I know that the music was always a little bit louder. I know the party was a little bit funner. But the idea of it being any type of illness or anything of the sort was completely foreign to me. And it would be sometime later before I realized and made the connection between the opiates, the substances, and the negative consequences in my life.
When I think about opioid use disorder being a disease, it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't a choice and to verbally acknowledge that. And the first time that I was introduced to the concept of an actual disease was actually in jail. And I was in a treatment program, and they were talking about the programs. Within the programs, we had workshops, and they were talking about the neurobiology of the brain and addiction.
When you have opioid use disorder, nothing else matters to you. Not friends, family, or even children. Once you become dependent on opioids, they have a hold on you. You see, opioid use disorder is a disease and needs to be treated. Once we understand it's a disease, we'll have empathy for the person with the disease. We'll also think and speak differently about this disease. Together, we can help reduce the stigma surrounding opioid use disorder and encourage those suffering with this disease to seek treatment. Here's how you can help. Go to knowtheofacts.org homepage. Find Take the Pledge at the top and click on it. Then fill in your information and take the pledge. Educate yourself about this disease. Be understanding to people struggling with opioid use disorder. Help them get treatment and support their path to recovery. You can take action to help us fight this disease by encouraging your friends and family to take the pledge to reduce the stigma surrounding opioid use disorder.